Lita's heart pounded as she raced through the dense forest. The alien scout moved with grace that came from evolution on a world with higher gravity, her blue-tinted skin glistening with sweat under the filtered sunlight. Her species, the Vraxians, prided themselves on physical superiority over most races in the galaxy, especially humans. But the human was still behind her. Somehow. Impossible! She hissed through sharp teeth. Her 4 eyes, 2 large primary ones and 2 smaller ones above, constantly scanned the environment as she ran. Her powerful legs propelled her over fallen trees and around large boulders with ease. The human had been tracking her for 3 days now. 3 days! Ever since she'd stolen valuable data from the human research outpost. Data that would give her people a huge advantage in the ongoing Cold War between their species. Lita had been confident when she took the mission. Humans were slow, weak creatures by Vraxian standards. Their only real advantage was their strange ability to keep going long after other species would collapse from exhaustion. But that wouldn't matter in a short chase, she had thought. She'd been wrong. This human, this tracker named Max, moved with a skill that defied her understanding of his species. He seemed to know the forest better than she did, despite this being her 3rd mission to Earth. He anticipated her moves, cutting off her best escape routes, forcing her to waste energy. Lita paused briefly, her breathing heavy as she listened for sounds of pursuit. Nothing. Maybe she had finally lost him. The thought had barely formed when she heard a twig snap to her left. Without thinking, she bolted right, pushing her muscles to their limit. The forest blurred around her as she ran faster than she ever had before. A hill loomed ahead. If she could just make it over that ridge, she might find a place to hide. Her legs burned as she sprinted up the slope, but hope surged through her. She was going to make it. The Vraxian command ship was waiting just beyond the mountains. Once she reached it, she'd be safe, and her mission would be complete. Just as she crested the hill, something struck her legs, tangling them together. She tumbled forward, rolling painfully down the other side of the hill before coming to a stop against a tree trunk. Before she could regain her footing, a figure appeared above her. The human Max stood there, barely even breathing hard. In his hand was a simple device, a bolus, 3 weights connected by cords that he had thrown with perfect accuracy to tangle her legs. How? Lita gasped, her translator converting her alien speech to English. You shouldn't be able to keep up with me. Max smiled slightly, his eyes showing neither hatred nor triumph, just calm determination. You rely too much on your physical advantages, he said, securing her wrists with a binding. I've been studying your people's movement patterns for years. You're predictable. You always take the path of least resistance, the most direct route. He helped her to her feet, surprisingly gentle for a captor. Humans learned to hunt by persistence and intelligence long before we had technology. He continued. We learned to read the land, to think like our prey. You might be faster, but I knew where you were going before you did. Lita felt a strange mix of anger and respect. This human had outsmarted her not with superior technology or strength, but with something far more dangerous, intelligence and adaptability. The very qualities her people had dismissed in humans. As Max led her back toward the human outpost, Lita realized that her people had gravely underestimated these strange beings from Earth. They weren't just stubborn survivors. They were skilled hunters who had turned their evolutionary disadvantages into strengths. And that, she now understood, made them far more dangerous than any physically superior species in the galaxy. The walk back to the human outpost was humiliating for Lita. Her legs still ached from the fall, and the binding around her wrists chafed against her blue skin. Max walked slightly ahead, occasionally glancing back to ensure she was following. Your people will never find the data chip, Lita said, attempting to salvage some dignity. I've hidden it where no human could ever locate it. Max didn't respond immediately. He paused, crouching to examine some tracks in the soft earth that Lita couldn't even see. After a moment, he stood and continued walking. You hid it in the hollow of an old oak tree, he finally said. About 3 miles east of where I caught you. The one with the distinctive split trunk. Lita stumbled, her 4 eyes widening in shock. How could you possibly know that? I watched you from the ridge line, Max explained. You thought you were alone, but I was there. I saw everything. I just needed to catch you first before retrieving it. Lita's mind raced. Her mission had been a complete failure. Not only had she been captured, but the humans would recover the valuable data she'd stolen. Her commanders would be furious. Failure was not tolerated among the Vraxians. You could have just taken the data, Lita said. Why chase me for 3 days? Max stepped over a fallen log, then turned to help Lita across. His assistance, despite her status as an enemy, confused her. Because we needed to understand how your people think, he replied. How you operate. Your strengths and weaknesses. And because I wanted to prove a point. What point? Lita asked bitterly. That physical superiority isn't everything. Your people have been raiding our outposts for months, always relying on your speed and strength. We needed to show you that humans have other advantages. They emerged from the dense forest into a clearing. In the distance, Lita could see the gleaming white structures of the human research outpost. Several guards stood at attention, watching their approach. My commanders will send others, Lita warned. Stronger, faster scouts. This changes nothing. Max smiled slightly. I'm counting on it. Maybe next time, they'll send someone who appreciates that brute force isn't always the answer. As they approached the outpost, a small group of humans gathered to witness their arrival. Lita held her head high, refusing to show weakness despite her failure. Her people would never understand how she'd been caught by a physically inferior species. Commander Bell, Max called out to a stern-looking woman at the front of the group. Mission accomplished. Subject captured and data secured. The commander nodded, her eyes studying Lita with intense curiosity rather than hostility. Well done, Max. Any complications? None, sir. She performed exactly as expected. Lita felt a chill run down her spine. As expected? Had they anticipated everything she would do? Had her entire mission been predicted from the start? Take her to holding cell 3, Commander Bell ordered. Make sure she's comfortable. She's our guest, not our prisoner. The distinction struck Lita as odd. On her world, captured enemies were not treated as guests. They were interrogated, often harshly. As 2 guards escorted her toward the main building, Lita glanced back at Max. He was speaking quietly with Commander Bell, pointing occasionally toward the forest. She couldn't hear their words, but their body language suggested they were discussing her pursuit. Lita had failed her mission, but she had learned something valuable, something her people needed to know. Humans were more dangerous than they had realized. Not because of their technology or their physical abilities, but because of their minds. They thought differently, planned differently, and most importantly, they understood their adversaries in ways the Vraxians never bothered to. For the first time since her capture, Lita felt something beyond anger and humiliation. She felt fear. Not for herself, but for her people and their misguided confidence in their superiority. The humans were playing a game the Vraxians didn't even know existed. And they were winning. The holding cell was nothing like Lita had expected. Instead of the cold, sterile prison she'd been prepared for, she found herself in a room that resembled comfortable human living quarters. There was a bed adjusted to her taller frame, a small table with 2 chairs, and even a viewing screen showing images of her homeworld, a detail that both comforted and unsettled her. The bathroom facilities have been modified to accommodate your physiology, explained a human female who introduced herself as Dr. Reed. If you need anything else, just speak toward the ceiling panel. Lita sat rigidly on the edge of the bed after Dr. Reed left. Her mind was working furiously, trying to understand the human strategy. Comfortable prisoners were more likely to talk, that much was obvious. But there seemed to be something more to their approach. The door slid open again about an hour later. Max entered, carrying a tray with food and a data tablet. The guards remained outside as the door closed behind him. I brought you something to eat, he said, placing the tray on the table. Our nutritionists have ensured it's compatible with your digestive system. Lita ignored the food. Have you come to interrogate me? Max sat down across from her. I've come to talk. There's a difference. Not where I'm from. That's exactly the problem. Max activated the data tablet, and a holographic display appeared between them. It showed the forest where he had tracked her, complete with both their movement patterns highlighted in different colors. Her path was direct, efficient. His was winding, strategic, always cutting off her best options. Your people have been studying us for years, Max continued. But you've only been looking at our physical capabilities, our technology. You've never bothered to understand how we think. Lita's eyes narrowed. And you claim to understand how we think? Better than you understand yourselves. Max manipulated the display, showing dozens of previous Vraxian raids on human outposts. Every one of your scouts follows the same basic pattern. You rely on superior speed and strength. You take the most efficient route. When pursued, you run in a straight line. He leaned forward. Humans evolved as persistence hunters. We didn't have claws or fangs or superior speed. We had to outsmart our prey, understand their patterns, predict their movements. It's ingrained in our thinking. Lita felt a growing unease. The human was right. Vraxians had always dismissed humans as physically inferior, never considering that they might have other advantages. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Tactical information should be kept from enemy combatants. Max's expression softened slightly. Because we don't want you as enemies. This cold war between our species serves no one. We've been trying to establish meaningful diplomatic contact for years, but your leaders refuse. Humans have nothing we need, Lita replied automatically, repeating what she'd been taught since childhood. No? Max adjusted the holographic display again, showing star charts. Your people are looking to expand beyond your current territory, but you're hemmed in by the Kalthori Empire to the north and the Mesic Confederacy to the east. The only viable expansion route is through the Tanner Nebula, which humans have already mapped extensively. Lita couldn't hide her surprise. The Tanner Nebula expansion plans were highly classified. How could the humans know about them? We've been watching, Max said simply. And learning. The same way I watched you in the forest. The same way I knew exactly where you would run, where you would hide the data chip. For the first time, Lita began to understand the true extent of her failure. She hadn't just lost the data chip or been captured. She'd completely underestimated her opponent. Commander Bell would like to meet with you tomorrow, Max said, standing to leave. Not for interrogation, for discussion. About what our species might accomplish if we worked together instead of against each other. As the door closed behind him, Lita stared at the holographic display still hovering above the table. It showed her capture, the moment when Max had perfectly anticipated her route and caught her with the simple bolus weapon. The moment when strength and speed had lost to intelligence and planning. The moment when everything she thought she knew about humans had been proven wrong. Sleep eluded Lita that night. She lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, her 4 eyes blinking in unsynchronized patterns, a sign of extreme stress among Vraxians. The humans had left the holographic display active, and she found herself repeatedly watching the simulation of her capture. Each viewing revealed new details she had missed, new moments where Max had made choices that seemed random at the time but now appeared carefully calculated. Morning arrived, announced by a gradual brightening of the room's lighting. Lita had barely dozed when Dr. Reed entered with breakfast and fresh clothing. Commander Bell will see you in 1 hour, the doctor said pleasantly. These clothes might be more comfortable than your field uniform. Lita examined the offered garments, simple but well made, and clearly designed with Vraxian physiology in mind. The humans had prepared for her capture long before Max had thrown that bolus. The realization sent another chill through her. After changing and reluctantly eating some of the provided food, Lita was escorted by 2 guards to a large room dominated by a round table. Commander Bell stood as she entered. Thank you for joining us, Scout Lita, the commander said. Please have a seat. Max was there too, along with 3 other humans Lita didn't recognize. She sat stiffly in the offered chair, her posture defensive. "I'll be direct," Commander Bell began. "The data you attempted to steal contained detailed scans of human brain activity during various tasks. Why would your military be interested in such information?" Lita remained silent, her training kicking in. Never volunteer information to the enemy. "We already know," one of the unknown humans said. An older male with silver hair and penetrating eyes. "Your scientists believe that human cognitive patterns might reveal vulnerabilities in our decision-making. Ways to predict and counter our strategies. If that's true," Lita finally spoke, "then you can understand why I cannot discuss it." Commander Bell nodded. "Fair enough. Then let me tell you what we've learned from studying Vraxian cognitive patterns." She activated a display similar to the one in Lita's cell. "Your people think linearly. Efficiently. Your neural pathways prioritize direct solutions over creative ones. It's made you incredibly advanced technologically, but somewhat inflexible strategically." Lita felt a defensive anger rising. "That's an oversimplification of our cognitive abilities." "Perhaps," Max interjected. "But it explains why I was able to track you so effectively. You consistently chose the most efficient path rather than the least predictable one." The silver-haired human leaned forward. "We're not criticizing, Lita. Different evolutionary paths lead to different strengths. Humans evolved in environments that required adaptability over specialization. Vraxians evolved for efficiency and physical prowess. Neither is inherently superior, they're just different." Lita struggled to maintain her composure. Everything these humans said contradicted her training. Vraxians were superior. That was the foundation of their society, their government, their military doctrine. "What do you want from me?" she finally asked. "Understanding," Commander Bell replied simply. "And perhaps a message for your superiors. Our species don't need to be enemies. We have complementary strengths and weaknesses. Together, we could accomplish far more than either could alone." The idea was so foreign that Lita almost laughed. Cooperation with physically inferior species was not the Vraxian way. Dominance was. "Your people are planning another raid," Max said quietly. "Larger this time. 20 scouts instead of 1. Special forces. They believe overwhelming force will succeed where your stealth failed." Again, Lita couldn't hide her shock. That information was top secret, known only to High Command and the assault team itself. "How could you possibly know that?" she demanded. Max exchanged glances with Commander Bell before answering. "Because we understand how your military thinks. When one approach fails, you don't change strategies, you escalate the same strategy. More force. More speed. More direct pressure. And it will fail." Commander Bell added, her voice gentle but certain. "Not because your warriors aren't skilled, but because we're expecting exactly that response. We've prepared accordingly." Lita stared at the humans around the table, seeing them with new eyes. They weren't the bumbling, physically weak creatures her people had dismissed. They were dangerous in ways the Vraxian military had never considered. And they were offering cooperation instead of conflict. The meeting continued for hours, longer than Lita had expected. The humans presented data, analyses, and projections that left her increasingly unsettled. They knew troop movements, command structures, even supply lines that should have been completely secret. "Your next question," Commander Bell said, seeming to read Lita's thoughts, "is how we obtained all this information." Lita nodded slowly. "You have spies among us?" "No," Max replied. "We have observation posts, monitoring stations, analysis algorithms. But most importantly, we have understanding. Once we comprehended how Vraxian military hierarchy functions, we could predict decisions before they were made." The silver-haired human, who had introduced himself as Dr. Winters, added, "It's like a chess game where one player can see 5 moves ahead. Not because they're smarter, but because they understand how their opponent thinks." As the meeting drew to a close, Commander Bell made an unexpected offer. "You're not our prisoner, Lita. You're free to return to your people." Lita blinked in confusion, all 4 eyes widening. You're releasing me? With a message, Max clarified. And a choice. Commander Bell handed her a small data crystal. This contains everything we've shown you today, plus a formal proposal for diplomatic relations between our species. Your superiors can verify the data independently. And if I choose not to deliver this message? Lita asked carefully. Then you choose to allow the next raid to proceed, Dr. Winters said. And 20 of your finest warriors will be captured, just as you were. We'd prefer to avoid that outcome. Lita stared at the crystal in her hand. By all rights, she should destroy it immediately. Her training demanded it. But something else, curiosity, perhaps, or a new seed of doubt about Vraxian's superiority, made her close her fingers around it instead. I'll be branded a failure, she said quietly. Possibly a traitor. Max shook his head. You'll be the one who brought vital intelligence about a misunderstood enemy. The one who saw what others missed. Our transport will take you to the border of the neutral zone, Commander Bell explained. From there, you can signal your people for extraction. 2 hours later, Lita found herself standing at the edge of a vast meadow, the human transport disappearing back into the forest behind her. She wore her original uniform, now cleaned and repaired. The data crystal felt heavy in her pocket. As she activated her emergency beacon, Lita replayed the events of the past 4 days in her mind. The chase through the forest. The moment of capture. The unexpected revelations. None of it matched what she had been taught about humans. A Vraxian scout ship appeared on the horizon within minutes, responding to her signal. As it descended toward her, Lita made her decision. The debriefing was as harsh as she had expected. 3 senior commanders questioned her for hours, their tone growing increasingly hostile as she recounted her failure and capture. So you allowed yourself to be outmaneuvered by a single human? General Crone asked, his voice heavy with disgust. A physically inferior being? Lita stood at attention, her posture perfect despite her exhaustion. The human demonstrated tactical abilities that our intelligence failed to anticipate. He understood my movements better than I did. Excuses? Spat Commander Vex. Your failure is inexcusable. With respect, Commander, Lita replied carefully. I believe my failure provides valuable intelligence. The humans are not as we believed them to be. They think differently. They plan differently. And they know far more about us than we realize. General Crone leaned forward. Explain. Lita took a deep breath, then removed the data crystal from her pocket. They gave me this. It contains information about our planned raid. 20 warriors. Special forces. Details that should be known only to High Command. The room fell silent. Commander Vex snatched the crystal from her hand, examining it suspiciously. They let you go? General Crone asked, his voice now uncertain. Why? They said they prefer cooperation to conflict, Lita answered. They believe our species have complementary strengths. The 3 commanders exchanged glances. Lita could see the doubt in their eyes, not just about the humans now, but about everything they thought they knew. The humans are dangerous, Lita continued. Not because they're stronger or faster, but because they understand us. They tracked me through the forest not with superior technology, but with superior thinking. They predicted my every move. Commander Vex inserted the crystal into a secure reader. As data began to flow across the screens, his expression changed from skepticism to concern. General, he said quietly, you need to see this. The command center fell into stunned silence as the data from the crystal displayed across the main screens. Detailed maps showed the exact location of the planned raid, the number of warriors assigned, even their names and specialties. Another screen showed defensive preparations the humans had already implemented, preparations specifically designed to counter Vraxian tactics. This is impossible, General Crone whispered, his voice having lost all its previous confidence. This information was compartmentalized. Only 5 people should have access to the complete operation plan. Lita stood silently, watching the realization dawn on her superiors' faces. The humans hadn't been bluffing. They truly did understand Vraxian military thinking well enough to predict their decisions. Commander Vex frantically checked the data for signs of falsification. The crystal could be planted with misinformation. A psychological operation. The operation details are correct. General Crone confirmed, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly. Every detail matches our plans. The third commander, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke. We must assume our entire command structure is compromised. Cancel the raid immediately. Initiate security protocols across all bases. Wait, Lita said, breaking protocol by speaking without permission. The humans aren't intercepting our communications or infiltrating our command. They're predicting our decisions based on understanding how we think. General Crone turned to her, irritation momentarily overcoming his shock. Explain. The human who captured me, Max, he knew where I would run, how I would hide, which paths I would take. Not because he was watching me the entire time, but because he understood Vraxian thought patterns. Our tendency to choose efficiency over unpredictability. Our reliance on physical superiority. Commander Vex scoffed. This is still just their psychological manipulation. They're trying to make us doubt ourselves. Then explain how they predicted our next raid in such detail. Lita challenged, throwing caution aside. How they knew 20 warriors would be sent. How they knew the exact entry points our forces planned to use. The room fell silent again. On the screens, more data appeared. Projections of Vraxian expansion plans, resource allocations, even internal political dynamics within the High Command. There's more. Lita continued, pressing her advantage. The humans have extensively mapped the Tanner Nebula. They know it's our only viable expansion route. General Crone's eyes narrowed. And they're using this knowledge to pressure us into diplomacy rather than conflict. Yes, Lita affirmed. They believe our species could accomplish more together than in opposition. They speak of complementary strengths. The 3 commanders huddled together, speaking in hushed tones that even Lita's sensitive hearing couldn't fully catch. After several minutes, General Crone addressed her again. Scout Lita, your mission did not proceed as intended, but you have brought back intelligence of critical importance. You will remain at headquarters for further debriefing. She recognized the careful phrasing, not praise, but not condemnation either. In Vraxian culture, it was as close to rehabilitation as she could hope for after such a failure. What of the humans' diplomatic proposal? She dared to ask. Commander Vex looked as if he would reprimand her for the question, but General Crone held up a hand to stop him. That will be decided at levels above this room, the general said. But your observations about human cognitive abilities will be included in the assessment. As Lita was escorted from the command center, she caught a glimpse of the main screen. The raid had been cancelled. New planning was already underway, but different this time. Instead of simply increasing numbers or firepower, the commanders were discussing changes in approach. Unpredictability. Variation. Adaptation. They were learning. The humans had forced them to think differently. 2 weeks later, Lita received new orders. She was being assigned as a cultural liaison to the first official diplomatic meeting between Vraxians and humans. Her experience with human thinking patterns was deemed uniquely valuable for the negotiations. As she prepared for the assignment, Lita found herself thinking about Max and their chase through the forest. How he had tracked her not with superior physical abilities, but with superior understanding. How he had caught her not with advanced technology, but with a simple tool and profound insight into her behavior. The humans had something valuable to teach the Vraxians after all. Not weakness, as her people had always assumed, but a different kind of strength, one that her physically superior species had never needed to develop. Until now.